Hello and welcome to our Ask an Author series. Today I'm excited to have a very good friend, Elizabeth Cummings. Welcome, my friend.
Hello, thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, thank you. You've been a busy little bee lately. I mean, we've just had Rain Shaker come out and you've got some exciting news to tell us.
I do. Yes, Rain Shaker came out in between lockdowns in October last year and was able to then have quite a protracted launch because I had to launch a little differently, which I can tell you about. But I'm excited to share the news that I've just signed another contract with wonderful Big Sky Publishing for another book. I know, and it's another picture book. So it's very exciting because I feel I'm having a continuing theme and feel to the work I've just done with them.
Tell us a little bit about, I've been there, done that, and I know how hard it is, about launching a picture book in the middle of COVID.
Well, we did know that we would be touch and go whether it was a complete lockdown or not. And in New South Wales, there were quite strict restrictions still on gatherings. So I knew that a little way out. So what I did was I hired a camper van and I was able to meet people one-on-one and in a COVID safe way take this book all the way to Broken Hill and back. So that isn't something I would have been able to do this year in the sort of lockdown we've been in, but the type of restrictions did allow for this COVID safe meetings, and we weren't restricted within New South Wales. So we didn't have the Delta, obviously. So I had this camper van and I even drove it, and I took a whole pile of books and I shared the story, which was very special and very personal, because you got to talk to people who were just so glad to have face-to-face meetings. And a lot of librarians in these small rural communities had been working so hard to keep reading up, to engage with the communities, to do a lot of outreach in communities that were quite impacted by the isolation. So to have an author bother to be interested to come and talk to them and to hear their stories was very special. I was humbled about the level of work and commitment these people have to their job as a librarian. It was incredible.
That's amazing. So this new book, is it a follow on from this one, or is there like some correlation happening there?
Well, Big Sky Publishing used Rain Shaker as their flagship book, I think they called it. And I don't know if you can see here, there's the little logo about caring for the world, caring for our world. And it's the little world with a love heart holding on. And so Rain Shaker has environmental themes. It's about a little girl and her desire to grow sunflowers. And she wants to do this because she knows they're good for the soil and she wants to share the sunshine. And her family live on a drought-ridden farm. And so you can see it's very Australian narrative. And she keeps her positive attitude. She has a certain self-belief, and there's a kind of magical realism to a way, because she believes she makes the rain come. She does a rain dance just out of joy from seeing the Christmas lights come on. She does the dance and then the rain starts. So she feels this dance started the rain. And so she has these wonderful dreams where she can be anything and do anything, and the rain's impacted it, and we find out whether these sunflowers grow or not in the book. So it's quite a magical tale. And that story is kind of connected to the next story, which is not about the drought as such, but it is about Australian setting. It is about a young protagonist who is making a difference in their own way and has their own idea, and it is to do with environmental messaging as well, but told in this narrative way where it's the story, and as a story in itself, it's appealing. So it's not trying to drive home a message as a non-fiction would, but we will also, like Rain Shaker, be having fun facts and activities at the back of the book, but it is going to be quite a special story, and we have quite a diverse character in it. But it's going to be this time next year it's going to be launching in that spring next year, so I'm wanting to keep some of the excitement and the reveal about it till then, but suffice to say it is part of that caring for our world that Big Sky have identified as a theme and are really looking to grow. This year their book that came out to do with that theme's by Alison Patterson, who's really quite well known for her military history work and Anzac heroes and those sort of stories. And she wrote this most beautiful book called I Wonder. And that's all about pollution, the ocean and a child's imagination, and also a little bit magical in terms of the connection of the child, the landscape and the possibility, but also with environmental messaging. So Big Sky definitely have a theme going here, and it's great to be part of it because I'm a big environmentalist myself.
I know, but you write, the way you write about environmental issues, it's written with such hope and such positivity, which I love, like especially when you're talking to kids about all of the stuff that's happening with that. The way that you introduce kids into it is always with this, I guess, innate positivity. And I love how you do that. Is that something that comes from the way you were brought up or how you're seeing the world now as an adult?
I think that's really lovely that you identify that. I know I tend to kind of get quite enthusiastic about things. That's my go-to position. I'm very much, oh, have a go, or let's try, or yes, so I'm that type of person, and I do reflect as I go, but I think that organic way that I am has been fostered obviously in the way I've been brought up. My mother was always into gardening, my father is into sustainability and town planning, and they were always very, very strong on the social justice and the landscape interaction, and also on the beauty of nature. I was the eldest of four. We spent childhood weekends out tramping, out hill walking, out on little tin boats with friends. It was the kind of free playground that we were brought up with, and my dad always liked taking an opportunity to tell us about the rock formation and how mountains were made in certain ways depending on where we were and the forests and so on. And so we were always having that education alongside that, I guess, and I just love being outside. I love the environment, and it's easy to see where the environment's impacted. So if you're outdoors, you see the pollution, you'll see rubbish on the ground, you're not going to walk past it, you pick it up. So I guess the way I've been brought up, coupled with that natural love of being outside, has drawn me to that sort of writing.
I love that. And I guess, is it something that you thought you would write about when you decided that you wanted to become an author? Has dealing with those kind of messages and themes always been your passion?
That's another fascinating question, because I think that I've always written and created stories as a child, or with my sister we made plays, and as a teacher I was very big on literacy and growing that love with my students, and we did a lot of work in the classroom, as you do, because literacy is such a major part of the curriculum. So it was always involved and writing for all these purposes. I think what turned me into deciding to get involved in publishing a book was my mental health stories, and that was looking at families, the impact of mental illness on a family. So that first book that I published independently was the catalyst for something that had always been there, this passion for storytelling, narrative sharing. And I guess the environmental side is something that's just part of who I am. So I naturally gravitated to those sort of stories too. And they do have that positivity. They do have that self-advocacy and resilience messaging that sort of entwines and has synergy with the mental health narratives that I'm engaged in writing and talking about as well.
And do you think, from an aspiring author perspective, it's better to start with things that you know and things that you're passionate about?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, we hear write what you know, but I think it's bigger than that, it's write who you are. And I think there are certain stories or ways that I would tell certain narratives that are inherent to the way that I am, and that would come across more authentically than trying to craft my writing to emulate the way someone else did it just because that was successful. And so there are certain books that I think I would never write or publish that, although I might love it, because that's not my natural way of being. So say I don't know, say with humor and I can write about funny things, but I would do it in a certain, the way it would be as I would write it is authentic to who I am. So I think for aspiring writers, it's so easy to look out and go, oh, they're amazing, they've done this, they've done that, that's obviously the way to do it, and to try and copy or you know, sort of follow that pattern, that would not be the way to go. The way to go would be to sit and reflect about what it is you want to share and how you can authentically share that in a way that relates your meaning and understanding the world with your audience, and allows them also space to find their interpretation of it, because none of us like being told things either. So there's that beautiful balance of showing, telling, sharing, learning and growing that we get from books, so and story or even non-fiction narratives. And I think when you are starting out, you've got to sort of put your blinkers on and think, where am I going with this? What is it about? And what is it to the essence of who I am?
Absolutely. And now that you've written for adults and kids, have you got a preference? Is one harder than the other? Or because it is very much about, you need to change so much about how you write and things like that. How have you found that experience?
Well, the published writing I've done for adults tends to be slightly more academic or article based, and as part of collections of chapter writings on certain academic topics, and then my poetry. So because those genres are so far removed from the picture book fiction style of writing, it's been easy in a way to transition between the two, because when you're asked to say write about clinical settings and storytelling, you're going to be doing it in using language and expression that's so different. Or if you're writing poetry to do with gender and identity, that's going to be something that sits quite uniquely and separately from stories about a young child making a difference in the world. So I sort of flip between the two, and I even in this anthology that I've been working on with many New South Wales creators for the Children's Book Council of Australia, my short story in that is really aimed at junior fiction level, and that again is a different genre of writing, and I've really enjoyed getting involved in that. And it again came from the fact that I was just really drawn to a certain idea I had, and the way that idea needed to be expressed. It was a junior fiction story. It was never going to be a picture book. So it's a little excerpt from what will be hopefully published junior fiction in time to come. And it's interesting, isn't it, the way that we find an idea and how that idea needs to be presented to an audience. And I think I don't think I can just be in one little niche. I think there are different ways of sharing ideas, and particularly in that mental health sector where you are talking to adult audiences as well as to school settings and younger children.
I think you're a very good example of honouring the story. So, you can have a story idea that you absolutely love, and you get a little bit locked into, this has to be a picture book, or you worry about the genre that you're writing instead of honouring the story. But you seem to be open to having these ideas and then seeing where the story takes you. Is that something that you've always known, or is that something that you've learned as you've gone along this journey?
I think I'm learning it as I go. I'm certainly having, and I'm thinking here about the aspiring writers who might be listening, what I found really useful is connecting with my community. So obviously that's how you and I met, is through writing communities. And one of the aspects of writing communities that I've loved are critique groups, and also conferences and events that have allowed the opportunity for manuscript assessments. And I think for an aspiring writer, often this manuscript assessment is this false hope that you're going to go, I've got this manuscript and I love it. And the publisher will go, oh, thank you, I'll publish it. It's never going to be like that. What it's going to be is a rigorous discussion of the idea and the work you have and how you best communicate that to, say, a publisher or an editor or an agent, and then how they hear and listen actively to what you're saying and give you the best advice where to go to from there. And very few translate directly into a publishing contract. For instance, my first book with Big Sky was the mental health story of the Forever Kid, where it was a family dealing with the bereavement of losing a child and what happens on that child's birthday every year, and celebrating that child's birthday. So it was a beautiful story and a very sad story. And I had the manuscript and I had the pitch and everything, and I met with wonderful Anushka Jones for a manuscript assessment in Melbourne at the Kid Lit Fest. And we sat down and she loved it, and she gave me lots of great feedback that then helped me hone and craft it such that then I actually submitted it to EK, and she looked at it and she took it to sales. But even at that stage, even then when the publisher liked it and loved it and thought it had validity and authenticity and everything, she had to take it to the sales team, and the sales team for EK said, look, great story, really moves us. Some of us are in tears, but it's not necessarily something we can take on commercially. So then I had to take that on board. But the beautiful thing about the community was then Anushka said, but this story, there is a place for it. Try Big Sky. So I went to Big Sky, who are a more diverse, so EK do picture books. Big Sky do military history, they do non-fiction, they do self-help, they do picture books, they do junior fiction. They've got a wider sort of coverage of different, and that's their commercial choice. So anyway, we took it to Big Sky, and they loved the story, and they could see where they could fit it in, and it really tied in, I guess, when you're doing things like military history and you're doing mental health self-books, and then you have a picture book come to you that also deals with family and mental health. They could see how that would fit in and could accommodate that. So they ended up contracting me and publishing my first picture book. So that's how that journey happened. And I think it was a combination, a team effort across a number of, probably more than a year, of several months of working together with different people who all were instrumental in taking this story and making it something that could sit on the shelf. And I think it's being open to that's important, and understanding that you have to, as an author, understand that you can see your story and your idea, but how that translates into something that's on a shelf as a product, and where and the purpose of that and how it will work commercially in the technical sense is something that you have to have the humility, I think, to listen to those who are working in that sector. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think aspiring authors also need to know that it is a marathon and not a sprint. And if you get one no, then that's just a no from them. And there is absolutely the options to rework it, like you were saying, get really great feedback. But if you get a no and you send exactly the same manuscript to somebody else without taking on board feedback, then you're almost asking to be rejected. It's really finding that balance between not giving up, taking on board feedback, and finding the right home for your story.
That's right. And the other interesting thing was, and the reason I was talking a little bit about the manuscript assessment was that, it's another manuscript assessment. I remember taking a picture book I had for a manuscript for a picture book. And the person I met, the editor, I think they were an editor, not an agent, they said to me, I actually think that this has so much in it. This is going to be a chapter book. This isn't going to be a picture book. And it completely reframed it for me. And so now that's something I'm working on as a junior fiction chapter book. I can still see how my original idea of how it could be quite visual, but I think that the way they encouraged me to look at it was really helpful. And then again, I took a middle grade to someone, and they said, look, you know, I see this written as more for young adults, and what I want you to do is go back and have a think about how you can build in X, Y, and Z. And it's a really wonderful process having these critiques, and then also with your critique groups, you do the same thing when you're in a group with other writers, as you know. But I think you have to be in the right space for it, and you have to be ready for that. And I think if you've got this mindset of, I've got my idea, this is my idea, that's not going to really help you become a published author, because what you do need is to have that objectivity, that set back look at how it will work. And, you know, are you there just to have someone pat you on the back and go, that's a lovely story? No, that's not that's not how it works. And I think once you get that, then you actually really enjoy a rigorous critique or a rejection, because that rejection is actually helpful. Because it's no use them publishing something that's half-baked, or that's the wrong genre, or uses the wrong language to communicate an idea. What you want is your story to be the best it will be. And that's what the publishers, they want to publish the best they can publish. And so you're all on the same team, and it's not a personal comment on oneself when something gets rejected or whatever. And I think if I could tell aspiring writers one thing, it would be that. It would be, don't be afraid of, welcome it.
I think
maybe have a piece of popcorn afterwards.
They don't realise that traditional publishing is a team effort. It's very much something, especially people who are transitioning from independent publishing to traditional publishing, they don't realise that you become part of a team, and everyone in the team has the same goal, which is to make the best book possible, but everyone has to do a little bit of give and take, I guess, which is a different experience from independent publishing, where you are in control of everything and you're making all the decisions. I actually really like working with the team and getting that feedback, and that's how you grow, I guess.
It is. And, you're one person. When you're publishing independently, you and I have both done that, and for particular reasons. We were speaking to specialized niche markets, and we knew exactly where our audience were and what needed to be said. But even in that, we've both used expert support and help to, either in, say, illustration or marketing advice or what have you, to get our books and our word out there. And it's a lot of work. Particularly, like, you're not just working on one manuscript, you're doing other stuff, and other books and projects are at different places too. So it's an enormous task to take on board, and then you have a bigger appreciation for the publishing industry as a whole, with what they're trying to achieve for many authors at the same time as you and your one book with them. So humility is a big thing.
It is. It's huge. It's huge. And I like how you've broken it down to the fact that it's all designed to make you better and to make your book better. Like, that's the whole thing. If you're doing it on your own, then you're relying on yourself, but you're also you're not challenged, and you're not growing, and you're not potentially making a great book by listening to that feedback and sticking with it and rolling with suggestions. And I think there's a whole different topic there that maybe we could talk about another time. I'd love to have you back and maybe talk a little bit more about even the mental health that's associated with rejection and editing. Like, that would be a really great thing if we could.
I think that would be. I think that would be that's a whole topic in itself.
It is. Oh my gosh. So before we go though, do you have any advice, any last minute advice for the people who are watching, who are looking at you going, I couldn't do what she does. She's just amazing. What advice would you give to these people?
Well, I would say, if I can do it, you can do it. I think that, I don't have, that's so nice that people would think that. But I think,
absolutely.
First of all, you've got to roll your sleeves up. You've got to be prepared to work hard. And if something matters, it's worth that work. So part of that work is taking the editing, taking the blocks when you think, I can't think of that word, or how do I transition from this part of the plot to that, or to how do I resolve this issue for my character? You get sticking points, and that's hard work, and rejections are hard work, but you've got to be prepared for that, and being a little bit humble that you are on that growing, learning journey. And the other thing is taking time away from that. Being able to laugh at yourself, or laugh at just I guess in some aspects the frustrations that wear that lightly, and not to try not to let it burden you, because that will suck the joy out. And we write because we're compelled, because there's a joy, a satisfaction in sharing, a need to express. So if you're going to squeeze that joy out by being hard on yourself, or by thinking the world's against you, or that such an editor hates you, or all this nonsense, it's not. It's just take a step back, go for a walk, put on your favorite song, have some chocolate, I don't know, just do something different. Maybe go and do that housework that you were never wanting to do. Just something different. Go and do your day job. We all have multiple roles when we write, and so take that break and then come back, and just take that time to be kind to yourself and go, you know what, it's a journey, and I'm on this journey, and that in itself is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. Thank you so much for putting it like that. Now, if we have got people who are watching who want to get in contact with you, what's the best way that they could get in contact with you?
Well, I have a website, elizabethmarycummings.com, and you'll be able to find me there. I'm happy if you check me out on LinkedIn, and there is an email associated with my website, but there's a contact form too. Really happy to hear from you. I'm on Instagram, Verityville, and I tweet now and again. So if you come across me, whatever communication means amongst those that works for you. And I do consults, I do advisory services, I do talks. So
absolutely. So I'll put all that information. I'll put all that information in the comments, so that people can just click on there and get to you very quickly. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to our next chat. So there's just so much that we can learn from you. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk a little bit.
Appreciate you.
About your picture books and advice for aspiring authors. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.